This is the Padua Podcast Network.
You can do everything possible to stay healthy, which as a listener to this show, I hope you're doing. Some unknown environmental or genetic issue could harm you anyway. Sometimes we don't understand how powerless we are in life. But there are things we can control and some surprises that we can avoid. We need to plan. Running a Fever, episode 180, How to Avoid Stress. Well, it got kind of windy here. Not in the open, not away from the trees, and it's usually when I get the most wind. Kind of breezy and not terribly warm. I think the official Running a Fever transportation device said that it was 81 degrees, and it's been overcast most of the day, but the sun's out. Speaking of which, I'm not wearing any sunscreen today against my own advice, but I have misplaced my sunscreen. I'm not sure where it is. Well, it's around here somewhere though, so I used it, I think, less than a week ago. So we'll see what happens. But it is later in the day and has been overcast, like I said. The sun's going behind a cloud as I speak. Also had a lot of rain. Backyard is kind of like a tropical rainforest right now. It's just gotten so out of hand. I think it's been 3 weeks of pretty heavy rain on and off. It's been rare to have 2 days without rain. Finally mowed the front yard yesterday after about 24 hours without rain. It was still kind of wet, but didn't have much of a choice. So I got a little bit of exercise that way yesterday. Still trying to get my 6,000 steps in at work. And today got pretty close. It's hard to see my watch in the sun, but yeah, I've already got over 9,000 steps right now. So looking pretty good on that front. I don't know, as of this morning, not much has changed. I'm still, I think, 27% body fat. But I'm getting a little nervous because biometric screening is coming up for me in another 3 weeks. And I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of room for error, put it that way. Still working on that, but over the weekend I did hit a high in terms of my weight, probably for over a year. It's 233, I think. So that is up there. But this morning, 223. 27% body fat, so not too worried about that, but I've got to be sure that I'm not overdoing it on my cheat days or meals or whatever they are. I need to probably get down to one cheat meal, eat out for that, so I don't have to buy anything and be done with it. And go back to the sort of healthy eating I'm used to. And healthy, you know, like I said, it's not necessarily what you eat, but also how much. You need to be moderate in that. So that's where I still have problems because I've still got this stuff around, you know, if I eat too much of it. So yeah, you can kind of tell I've been out of this game. Haven't been working out. Haven't been eating very well for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Just stuff happens. I don't want to go into it in too much detail, but you know, stress, which brings me to my point today. Stress really is what's been giving me trouble lately. So today's topic is how to avoid stress. So, you know, I mean, how many times have I said stress is a vicious killer, slayer of men, a menace to all earthly life? Well, today I want to talk about how to avoid it so we can live longer, happier, healthy lives. Healthier lives right to the very end. So Speaking from my own experience, I'm 53 years old, moved over 20 times, had just as many jobs, almost as many employers. Started and shut down several small businesses. I've had health issues, including an $8,000 night in the hospital when I had no insurance. I've had high income, I've had low income, I've had negative net worth. I've had unmanageable levels of debt. I've been in and out of numerous relationships as a lifelong bachelor, and more stressful situations that I won't mention here. Basically, I feel highly qualified to talk about having stress. You know, every time I think about complicating my life again, which I'm always doing, I should really think about times like this. You know, it's simplicity that really is such a value. So I need to think about that the next time I want to complicate my life with something more complicated. But we all have stress. I mean, no matter what your situation, it's just a part of life. And without it, we'd be even worse off. It's a survival mechanism. It kicks our bodies into high gear when we're taken by surprise with a serious threat, so we can do what needs to be done. I was thinking about this in regards to the human animal and other animals. Very few animals live longer than humans. Perhaps some tortoises and elephants and maybe different kinds of parrots. They seem to face a lot more stress. They can't go to the grocery store to get food or even to the soup kitchen. I think of lions and tigers have to kill some hard to kill animal for food and then fight off other lions and tigers and other animals who might want the same food. But when you put them in captivity, a situation in which their survival has no external threat, food is provided, they face the stress of captivity because it's so against their nature. So they need balance, and so do we. So avoiding stress means avoiding surprise. Now, as I said before, stress is ultimately unavoidable. You can drive obeying all safety precautions, and somebody else could still run a red light and slam into your vehicle, causing a very stressful situation. You do everything possible to stay healthy, which as a listener to this show, I hope you're doing. Some unknown environmental or genetic issue could harm you anyway. These things are going to happen. Sometimes we don't understand how powerless we are in life. But there are things we can control and some surprises that we can avoid. We need to plan. What can we plan for? There are a couple of categories. One is contains the things that we know are going to happen. Death, health issues, taxes, the need for food, shelter, clothing. For most of us, a vehicle and a job, which is going to change over time. Children, spouse, education, retirement. For most listening to this podcast, these are all things that we'll have to deal with. Different cultures will have different certainties. Second category is things that are unknown until they happen. There are always ways to expect the unexpected and prepare for the unknown. So my good friend Patty Bruner said in her Truth of the Spirit podcast that humans have a 100% mortality rate. So we all should be prepared for death. Everybody dies. And though you might think it really doesn't matter, I'll be gone. We're talking about stress you may feel before your death, about your legacy, the impact of your death on those you leave behind. Things like a will, a burial policy, life insurance, or ways to plan financially. And we know finance is a big stress category. But there are other things you may need to plan for, including who will take care of the people that you take care of, or care for. or take over other important things that you do, whether it's raising children or running a charity or something else, like running a podcast network. The world is constantly changing, and we need to be prepared for changes in the employment world, whether it's public taste or technology. When the automobile came along, the days of the farrier, the buggy whip fashioner, and the horse stable worker became numbered. Manufacturing robots are replacing the assembly line workers that made some of those automobiles. So think about the education and training you may need to be employable when changes take place, not if they take place. I was just thinking about, there are some professions that don't change a lot as far as what you actually do and the material you have to work with. For example, if you're a writer today, sure, you have computers, you have the internet to use for your research, but if you want to, you can still do research in a library the same way you might have done 100 years ago. You can still write on a typewriter if you want to. But if your job is, repairing typewriters, you're not going to be able to do that very well. It's going to be kind of hard to make a living repairing typewriters because you'll only be serving those few writers who really want to use a typewriter. But, if you're a professional violinist, I can't believe I'm just talking about artists here, really. Hasn't changed a whole lot. Obviously, if you're in a technical or medical field, there are many things you have to keep up with. If you're in business, that changes rapidly. Most of the things we do change over time, and not just because of technological advancements, but because of advancements in and changes in the way people relate and do things. Be ready for a job change or a change in your job. Long-term care is enormously expensive. I really had no idea until I kind of looked recently, and if you need skilled nursing care on a long-term basis, that can cost $7,000 a month, which is a lot. That's why people run out of money. $7,000 a month. And a lot of people fall in this category at some point in their lives. Many of us will need this. We need to plan for it, not just by buying insurance and saving money, but by structuring our assets to take advantage of government assistance that we have paid for in taxes throughout our lives and will almost certainly need. Many people don't plan. They wind up losing their homes and living the end of their lives at a near poverty existence, which also severely limits the choices available and the kind of lifestyle you can have. Medicaid planning is not something you can do when you need it. By then, it's already too late. Insurance can help soften the blow of unexpected expenses other than death. These may come up due to sudden disability or aforementioned traffic accident, and everyone should have an emergency fund, ideally containing at least a year of expenses. A year is probably about all you should ever need, I would think. But that emergency fund should be liquid. It's not something that you should have invested in the stock market or in anything other than basically a high interest savings account, like a money market savings account is where you need it. So you can have access to it almost immediately. So, that's designed for unexpected expenses like the loss of a job or medical expenses, home or vehicle damage, anything that's not covered by insurance. And it's really for the things you can't think of. If you knew something was going to happen, then you could save up for that thing. But this is money that you have to have saved up because the unexpected is going to happen. Howdy. So even for the unknown, there's ways to plan for that. So don't overextend yourself by getting into debt or living above or outside your means. I think of overtime here. Many people have the option of working overtime to make more money. In my profession, there are a lot of contractors and consultants like this. But this extra money can be like a drug. You can get addicted in a way. Before you know it, you're living a lifestyle that can only be supported by constantly working a lot of hours. You can do it for a long time, but it does take its toll. And you can wind up missing the most valuable things in life, like time with friends and family, or contributing to something you're passionate about that doesn't pay or doesn't pay enough. Live within your means, and instead of working more hours, improve your employment value in the long term through education, training, or getting the right kind of experience to move up. Because we're talking about avoiding stress here. If you're working 60 or more hours a week, that's probably pretty stressful, no matter what you do. So, as far as debt goes, my experience tells me that debt is acceptable for things like a house and a car. It's just kind of our culture. These things you kind of need a place to live, and paying that debt, it's not much different than paying to rent it. So it often, not always, depends on what kind of debt it is. It used to be like about 10 or 15 years ago. We had a famous real estate bubble, and people were borrowing money, and they were making payments such that they could never get out of debt. Never possible to pay off what they owed. So you definitely don't want to get into that kind of deal. But in general, a house and a car are good things to borrow money for, as long as you're smart about it. And hopefully you put down enough money on it so that if you ever do have a problem, you can sell whatever it is you borrowed money on, pay off all the debt. So keeping track of the interest you pay is a good motivator. Look at that number as potential income that you could make every month when that debt is paid off. Something you get no value for. So we know some great ways to alleviate stress after the fact, and now we know some good ways to prevent it from happening in the first place, which is even better in my opinion. Ounce of prevention, it's worth a pound of cure. There's always going to be things we can't plan for, but we should take care of the things we can. I am a big kind of planner. I really like to have things planned, and I really don't like surprises, which I'm sure some people really like. So after being kind of away from exercising for a while, I'm feeling kind of weak today. No doubt that I'll make it, but I'm already feeling a little soreness in my back, and those kind of things that crop up when I'm not in as good a shape as I am when I'm being regular about my exercise. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode about stress and avoiding it, and I hope you got the fever for running a fever. And I'll talk to you next time.